All right, so we're back and just doing a quick little update since we've just kind of been out for a little bit, and holiday season, vacation, work stuff, just life tends to get in the way. So we're back and just want to kind of do a quick little update. So obviously a lot going on in the world. With the Freedom Project, we're wanting to have discussions about how to get freedom from life's struggles. That comes in a variety of different ways: financial stress, physical problems, mental, spiritual, all those different areas of life, can be attacking it a lot of times. And so the Freedom Project, we're trying to expose, a lot of information that's really helpful in all those different areas. And so, obviously a lot going on,
There's so much going
from
on.
holidays and family stress, relationships and friendships, so much stuff like that. So, just kind of what's been going on with you lately, and kind of what's most interesting to you. What's going on right now?
Oh my goodness. I feel like all I do is read late night. I'm like reading or listening to the podcasts, but I think I saw this was the first year that I noticed what was that thing going around that like really the year's supposed to start in March. Did you see that where it's like the original, is it the Gregorian calendar?
Oh,
where
yeah.
like you really should like the new year should really be like March 1st or something?
Yeah, so I kind of nerded out on this
You
a couple
did?
months ago. Yeah, so I was really curious because I saw a video on social media that talks about it doesn't make sense where you have September and Sept is 7
Mm-hmm.
and October Oct is 8, right? So I'm like, well, then why are those months 9 and 10? And so going back, a lot of it has to do with the Roman calendar. So the Romans used to start, and this is based off of just whatever I can remember, Cliff Notes. But the Romans used to start their calendar in March. Or sorry, it was April. It
April.
was April.
Okay.
Yeah. And this
Which
brings
is
in
wild
April
because it's
Fools.
where,
Yeah. April Fools
oh,
actually has a tie into this.
okay.
So they used to start in April because of the harvest season, right? Like it would be the best time to kind of start it based off of the farming season, when new life grows, and that type of stuff. So it was based on that. And then they had different months. Some of the months are attributed to like Greek goddesses and gods. So I think June was related to Jupiter or something like that. So I could be wrong, but some of those months are related to gods, and then the other ones are just based off of like the Latin root words, sept, oct, nov, right? And they changed that at one point. One of the emperors changed it because for political reasons. So
Imagine that.
yeah. So they changed it for political reasons. I think had to do with like voting and stuff like that. So it'd actually be good to have the notes and kind of go through it because it's super interesting how they changed it. And then it's just we've kind of adopted a lot of the Roman calendar till now. And then once you start using it so long, it kind of gets set. But yeah, the April Fool's thing would be those that they bucked the old system. So they're like, no, we refuse your new start of the year. We're going to choose to still celebrate it on the 1st. And so they would call them fools for,
Oh my
for
goodness.
starting on the 1st of April. And
Wow.
so it became April Fool's Day. And then we changed that into like just, playing jokes and stuff like that. And it was really interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a whole lot more to that if anybody wants to go and do some research. So
Well, I didn't dive that deep into it, but I did mentally just kind of rest. Like it makes sense. I've always loved winter. Like building a fire is like my favorite thing to do, and just sitting by a fire. And, I just love the snow and winter and getting into that like deep restorative rest. And just taking things slow. Like when that snowstorm came through, we actually are staying in a tiny home right now. So my house in Fort Worth had some slab leaks. And so we had to move out. We moved out the first week in January. And we moved into this, I think it's 900 square feet, this tiny home. And we have 5 people in our family.
oh man,
And we have one bathroom.
good way to get to know each other.
And I mean, truly though, like it has been the best thing. It has been so good. First of all, we only took a tiny amount of our belongings, like compared to what we own, And what was wild is I bet we only have used like 25% of the things that I took there with us.
A different perspective shift on what you actually need.
What you actually need. And so that's been a huge burden lifted from my shoulders. And what I found, I'll circle back here, but what I found with all this free time, right? So since I didn't have all my belongings weighing me down and like this long to-do list of like, oh, I could decorate this shelf, or oh man, I really need to like organize the playroom, like it freed up my time for all of this time with the Lord and just rest. Like I was in deep, deep rest. We actually went down to my dad's in Glen Rose because we were in the tiny home. We didn't want to be there in case it froze or we lost power or anything, which luckily they didn't. But we went down to my dad's. So that whole snow break, we got to spend like 5 days with my dad, which like never happens. And the kids just had a blast. So
yeah,
it was super fun. And so now we're kind of, spring is coming. We're getting back to work. And I wish we all could just take a big, long rest like that.
Yeah. Well, I think, rest is a really overlooked topic, right? Which God in Genesis sets out the example that he's going to work for 6 days and rest for the seventh, right? So it's a good thing to rest. And one of the things we've been doing in our house is watching that TV show Alone. I don't know if
Oh
you've
my
seen
gosh, Blake. Literally, I watched it. Like I just
really?
binged the last season like 2 weeks ago, and I was obsessed. And it's been winter, so I kind of like one day Chase texted me, and he was like, "You want to have lunch?" But I was like down in Benbrook at the tiny house, and so I couldn't get up here as easy. And I go, "No, I think I'm just gonna like bear it out today." And I sent him a picture of my plate of a kipper snack fish with like some cranberries.
I'm in the Alone.
And I was like, I'm just gonna alone it today.
Yeah. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, the show Alone is it's about 10 participants get dropped off in the wilderness, usually up in the Arctic. They have different seasons in different places, but they're only allowed to bring 10 items, and then they just kind of see who lasts the longest. And it's really fascinating. But for me, it's been a thing of like, we kind of get just lost in our culture that we have all these amenities. You can turn on the tap water, no problem, right? But then you're watching these people out in the wilderness, and it's like, oh, you want clean drinking water? You got to go get water, boil it, and
And that's just
food.
killing the bacteria. Like it might still not be clear. It won't still be clear.
Yeah, you've got animals trying to kill you, so you don't have a good, if you don't have a good shelter. Food is always a big issue too. Just to go and get food, which we just go to the fridge or the pantry or the store and just buy. We're so disconnected from that. And what was really interesting, I don't know which season, did you watch the one on Netflix?
Yes, it was the one that was on Netflix.
Yeah.
So it was like up in Canada, right?
Yeah,
like
they had Timber, right?
Yes.
Timber
oh my
was
gosh.
really interesting to me.
He
because
was so interesting.
He's a Christian. You could tell he's a Christian, and he was open about it, at first, and just openly talking about it. But you could see the longer that he went, the closer he got with God, because every single thing that happened to him, he was in that constant conversation of, God, I need some food, and when he'd get food, he'd be like, thank you, God, this is, a blessing. And you could really see him walk. To me, that's like walking with the Lord, right?
Right.
And you see the verse that says, pray without ceasing. And what does that really mean? I've always kind of struggled with, what does that mean? Because it's like, I can't just be sitting in prayer with my eyes closed, and stuff. But really what I've started to understand is it's more of just having conversation on day-to-day stuff, recognize the things that when something good happens, you just thank God for it and just recognize that he's moving continuously. And it's just seeing Timber, kind of going through his process and just having a constant conversation with God was like, that's the praying without ceasing,
yes,
type of an approach. And our church actually did a series called Alone where they were kind of playing off of that show a little bit. And they had some members of the church just go out into the wilderness for like 4 days on their own, just turn off their phone and just had the word, but they had like a little cabin set up, so they're not trying to survive, right? But but it was just mainly just like cut out all the distraction of life and just focus on what is God telling you, what conversations do you need to have with God? And it just kind of reframed their mind and all that. So it was really interesting. So I've been kind of just deep into that. And to me, there's something special about getting out into nature. So God's creation, what he provided for us to enjoy with the beauty, but also just the supplies that we need. I think the more that we get in touch with that, the more we kind of understand, the whole relationship that he's created for us. And I think the more modern that our life gets, the more we kind of say, I don't need water. I can go get it. I don't need all this stuff from God. I've got it all myself. I've taken care of myself. And it's a subtle thing that we're not doing consciously, but we kind of lose that perspective of how much we really need God to work in everyday life just for the little things.
Absolutely.
So that's been kind of a fun thing. And so for me, I'm trying to structure more time outside this summer. So
Oh,
that's
yes.
kind of
I've
my goal.
already been thinking about that too. That's so funny that we've kind of been on the
Yeah.
same path, but we've been on break from like seeing each other doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had a similar experience lately where we've just had some shifts, like, you know, we're kind of uprooted and then we're spending all this money on the house. Like, it's just been this very unexpected season. So I've been trying not to stress out my husband and being like, hey, I need this. Oh, we got to buy this. Oh, we got to get this. You know, I've genuinely like gone down to minimalism just as kind of like a little test to myself and the Lord of like him bringing me into this season of like, you do not need much. And what you do need, I am going to provide for you. And so it's actually been really sweet because I've kind of been doing this challenge with myself where I like don't ask him for, my husband is our primary provider. Thank you, Chase. And so I've just been like not asking him for anything. And I'm telling you, when I say it was like a span of like 6 weeks, every single day, the Lord provided for me what I needed and what I needed to buy the kids, like as far as food. So like I literally, I remember one day, I think it was a range of like my little account that I have that's for like my everyday expenses. Like one day it had like $5 in it. And normally that's when I would be like, hey, Chase, you got to reload, you know, like, and I didn't. I let it sit. And sure enough, like the Lord lined up either like a brand new patient that I had never seen, or like, you know, something just random would happen that I did not try to go after. And I remember one day, it might have been close to when it was like real low, a client paid me cash, which like never happens. Like literally, I never use cash. And this client was like, are you okay? I just need to pay you cash. And I was like, thanks, you know? And so it was so crazy that I like did not have to talk to Chase about it. And it was just this sweet time with me and the Lord of like, you are okay. Like we are blessed and I'm going to provide for you no matter what. And so with all the things going on in the world, it's just been this sweet little comfort that he's given me of like, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. Like we've got this. Let's focus on today.
Yeah. Funny that you say that because I've been going through like really similar type of stuff. For me, really, it's been, you know, trying to start my own marketing company and get that off the ground. You know, I'm always chasing like these ideas that I have and stuff instead of just like really doing one thing really well. And so that's just kind of caused me where I felt like I'm busy. I felt like I've been, you know, like pursuing, you know, listening to God and going the directions, but it's like then so many things fail and then you're like, man, what is going on? And really it's just been kind of this like a lot of times where like the months are like, you know, nothing in the account or even go negative for a little bit. And then it's like, man, I'm working so hard, but like, why isn't anything just kind of like kicking off? And it's really just been a season of God testing, like, you're trying to do all this on your own. Would you just chill out a second, do what I've given you on your plate really well, and then I'll take care of it, you know? And it's that trust, you know, factors has been really hard, which I wouldn't think, you know,
Right.
if you
Like
would have
you
told me
think
5 years
like,
ago.
yeah, I trust the Lord,
Yeah.
but like, do you really?
Well, yeah. And it's like, you know, you would ask me, you know, do you trust well? It's like, yeah, well, you know, it's not a problem. This like, then you start to hit you like right where things are tough, you know, finances and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like trust. But what was really cool is like, I've gotten a lot better about that in the last year, really trying to work on that specifically. And our son had his first surgery. He's never even had a needle, you know, since he got, you know, born. His birth, you know, he had, you know, his basic shots and stuff, but he's never had a needle for like an IV, blood drawn, or anything. And so now he's up for an oral surgery where he has a tooth coming in down low and it was cutting across his bottom teeth. And so they were like, we have to go in there and cut down to that tooth, put a chain on it so we can help redirect it back. And so, you know, he's nervous, you know, about this, but for me, it's like, okay, it's, you know, going to be some extra unforeseen money, you know, to pay for this oral surgery. I'm like, all right, well, I got some projects coming up, you know, it'll be good. But then like other things happen and it's like, it would suck away what I thought was the extra. And so it's like, okay, God, you know, just, I'm literally just gonna like chill out and let it all go. And sure enough, like one of the clients that I was spacing out their payments through the whole year. They're like, "Hey, how about we just go ahead and pay up front a majority of it, that way to make our monthly payments smaller." And it was totally unprompted a week before the surgery.
Literally only God can
Yeah,
do that.
and I'm like lining up the dollars. I'm like, yeah, I think we'll have just enough, kind of sweating it. And then it was like, boom, there you go.
Yeah,
And
only God.
yeah, and then it took care of that. And I was like, I've got to really like get it through my thick head that I shouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff because God's just gonna take care of it. And it's a long process because the other thing I've been learning too is my mind can make adjustments quickly, but the emotions are so slow to catch up.
Right.
So in my head, I'm telling myself, God's going to provide. And I'm like, cool. My mind gets it. My heart's like, I'm freaking out still. And I'm like, why can't I get those two to sync up? And it just takes, and that's the discipline part of it. You got to continuously do it over time. And it eventually, I've noticed slow changes, but it's a slow process.
I wish I could pull up this verse, but this verse has come across, I'll find it later, but it was just like talking about the discipline and how it will reap the rewards. Like, don't grow weary in the discipline because that's what builds righteousness. And I've really been clinging to that verse lately because discipline is so important. And I think especially in the times, but I'm excited today because we're going to interview Dr. McWhorter about peptides. Mm-hmm. And I know you've been, really interested in all of that. So I'm excited to hear your perspective on it. I just saw him walking through the parking lot. So that means that he's almost ready for us.
Perfect. Well, one more thing on your verse. I think it's a different verse, but I know James 5 came to mind.
Yes.
Where it says, "Count it all joy, brothers, when you face trials of various kinds, because the trials produce character." And that to me has always been a great verse that I've enjoyed because it's like, the trials should be a blessing, but it's like in the moment they're not.
Right.
But afterwards they are.
I love that verse too. We had a Bible study. Well, we had a Bible study question and it literally had that verse. And then it also had, I want to say it's Hebrews, but hold on. I just have to find it for us.
Yeah.
Let's see. Because it was crazy because God brought me that verse from a friend online. And then it was like in my Bible study. And I love when he does that. Shoot. I really thought it was right there, but I'll find it soon.
Well, through the power of editing, we can put it up on the screen.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm going to come back and find that and he's going to work it in.
Hey, Editing Blake here in the studio, and we found that verse, so just wanted to read that to you here. It is Hebrews 12:11. "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it."
But, okay, I see Dr. McWhorter making his coffee. Cool. So I'm so excited to be back.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys on the Peptides episode. Well, we are back with the Freedom Project and Dr. McWhorter, and we have a very exciting conversation today about peptides. So there's obviously a lot of hype around peptides, at least from the circles that I'm running into, and all the amazing benefits that people are claiming that they're having, and really just want to kind of get more into the details about what the peptides are, what's available out there, and just more information so you can kind of better assess whether it's right for you or how to appropriately use them. So I guess to start off, Mr. McWhorter, would you just kind of give us a base understanding of what peptides are and how they function with the human body?
So peptides really are protein fragments, and they're great messengers. One of the better known peptides is, if you're in the South, it's called semaglutide. If you're up north, it's semaglutide. Or Ozempic, or all these weight, laws, weight control medications you have to inject. Some you can take orally, but they're messengers, okay? And they're very powerful. I'm surprised they're as powerful as they are when they're so small. But what they do is they have multiple functions, and the last time I checked, there were between 3,000 or 4,000 peptides that we have come across. So they have different usages, depend on which one you choose, but they are powerful messengers. They turn on various biologic pathways or turn off biologic pathways, and it's a whole new frontier. It's like discovering hormones.
So they're all naturally occurring.
No.
No.
Well, take for instance semaglutide. It's a GLP-1 agonist. It is not GLP-1, but it has just almost the same molecule. It may have another amino acid addition to it. So some are and some aren't. Some are fragments of what you might find in the human body, but they're not what you call native or bioidentical.
And so they're deriving all of these either lab made or from an animal, I would assume.
Well, they have different processes. Sometimes they can get bacteria to manage these. So they whatever, and some they take they can harvest from an animal or any other type of species, but the processes vary according to the peptide.
So a real basic understanding for somebody who's maybe not in the medical field is the peptides basically help the human body to do their natural functions, but maybe helps more with the communication to get it to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Now, if you look at something like semaglutide, it functions on at least 3 different levels, but it turns on switches that may have been turned off, so it will activate biologic pathways, and sometimes it will deactivate. I mean, there is one peptide that is good to eat up, or it triggers the autophagy, or the removal of senescent cells. So it's quite interesting on the various functions, and I think as time goes on, we'll find more peptides and more functions, but it's at its initial stages. And I have to say now we have to be very careful. The majority of them are not FDA approved. Not that that matters, but you have to be very sure of your sources. If you can't get it through a compounding pharmacy, I would be very, very concerned, because they will come with the label "not for human use," and if you don't know your source, you don't know if they're contaminants. So I'd be very careful, and always remember, when you hear something on a podcast or a webcast, you never hear about the failures. You only hear about the successes. Okay, so I would say be careful on what you hear, and just have a good source to go to, not on media. Okay.
That happened to my close friend, actually. She just started, it was this CJC Ipamorelin because she
Yes.
had heard about it online. She started dosing herself because she's a nurse, and she had really bad side effects.
So you also have to be careful when you inject these, because they are proteins, and it's rare, but you could have an allergic reaction. Um, and you also have to remember, just taking a peptide by itself is not how our medicine goes. Okay, it's a tissue-centric medicine where we're not just concerned about the cell, it's the tissue that surrounds the cell that makes the cell work better. So these peptides have to interface with the matrix, or the tissue, to stabilize it to make the cell work better. So I caution against this being a magic remedy, because that's a cell job at this point in time. And everybody could react differently, but like the CJC, ipamorelin, it releases your own human growth hormone. And that's a whole, biologic pathway we can explore at one time. But yeah, people have different responses. But if you're not, like for your friend, especially with women, if you don't have a good testosterone level, human growth hormone doesn't work that well. And I think we have to, again, see the big picture in using the peptides.
Yeah, I think too, from what I've seen on like TikTok, social media, is that this peptides is like the new hype, right? It's this new exciting thing that everybody's like, oh, now we've kind of figured it out, right? Now we've got the magic cure, right? And so there's been all this hype around it, especially with Ozempic. I think that's been by far the most popular one. And I've even seen friends and stuff that are like, oh, I'm on Ozempic and I'm losing all this weight. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Well, now it's starting to come out, all the side effects that you get from it, the poor skin quality, and if you get off of it, your weight can come back, completely or even more than before. So we're starting to kind of see the fall. It kind of comes in waves, right? Everybody gets excited about it, then it drops off, and now everybody's like, oh, I don't know, it's really dangerous, right? And then they kind of overcorrect on the other side. So that's why I think it's just really important to kind of level out those peaks and valleys of the hype and
sensationalism, and you don't want to have a market-based protocol. You want to have an evidence medical-based protocol. Now, what you were saying, if you go to somebody who knows what they're doing, you avoid these things for the most part. So I think there's certain practices that probably I would not go to for the semaglutide or peptides, because you have to have a total program once again. I mean, you can know this. When I hand out, it's 12 typewritten pages before I start you on what to expect, how to address it, and then I have a maintenance protocol when you get to the weight that you want to be at, where I help you make your own GLP-1, which you can do with the right probiotic and the right feed. So again, as the Endocrine Society said, you have to have a protocol for these peptides. It's like anything, it's insulin or anything else. You have to have a continuing follow-up. Obesity is a chronic disease. The GLP-1 agonists are wonderful used in the right hands under the right circumstances. So what you say is very true. A lot of the side effects that you're hearing about is maybe not optimal instructions or usage. But remember, the Ozempic or semaglutides treat diabetics, which have all these problems in the first place, okay? So a lot of the problems you hear about where you have a slower emptying of the gut, kind of a paresthesis of the gut, that's already present in a diabetic. So, but there are ways to, decrease these symptoms, make them tolerable, but that's kind of the art of knowing how to use peptides.
So what I've seen from your practice, I would say for people out there looking for physicians or someone to guide them through their peptide use, if they're not monitoring your labs every 6 months or so, and if they're not recommending any more vitamins and supplements alongside the peptides, then you're probably in the wrong place, don't you think?
Yes. And remember, we go back to the tissue-centric. This is a way to alkalinize your extracellular matrix of the tissue around the cell. You're controlling insulin, which is very difficult to do. So it gives you an opportunity to reach your maximum alkalinity and your least amount of chronic inflammation. It works wonderful in dropping your chronic inflammation. In fact, my CRP is not detectable. And in case anybody wonders, I use it on myself. It's prescribed to me by another practitioner. But if I'm using it, it certainly gives my patients confidence that it's not lethal. Now, you hear a lot of this hype on Ozempic face. Well, what's happened, they got fat, they got the little chippy chipmunk pouches, they dropped the fat and their face went in. It's not Ozempic's fault, is you ate too much in the first place. I hate to be brutal, but so you kind of have to have a fine line of how much do you want to lose and what are you going to look like after you lose it. But the prime directive is don't lose so much weight that you lose muscle. That is a big no-no. So again, there's a art of medicine in using these, and I think you have to be given proper instructions. I generally follow up on a patient, and now that we have telemed, like every 12 weeks as they're trying to lose weight, just to be sure that we're in the right direction. If we have a problem after the weight has been achieved, every 6 months to a year, because at that time you know what to do, but you always have to keep monitoring. Now, we say weight. I really go by waistline. Your waistline is a better indicator of the fat you need to lose, because that's the bad fat you're losing. And that really helps you from losing muscle. The loss of muscle is called sarcopenia. So if you ever see the word sarcopenia, that's unwanted loss of muscle mass, in my opinion. And as we get older, sarcopenia happens anyway, but we don't want to expedite that using the semaglutide, tirzepatide, okay, or one of those.
Yeah, so I think kind of going from Ozempic, the newest thing that's kind of out there is the GLP-3 Retta. Is the short term for it. I forget what the full name is for that, but that seems to be the new exciting thing, because the way it's being presented on social media is this is like Ozempic 2.0, where we fixed all the problems with Ozempic, and now this is like a much better solution. So I just came across it last week and kind of did a little bit of, digging around, and people are showing great results, which gets everybody excited. But then my immediate thing is, where do I go to learn more
Did
about
you
it?
see
And
like where they're purchasing it? Like where are they
no,
getting it
they're
from?
not showing that part. They're just showing like, look at the results that I'm getting. I
Mm.
mean, their faces looked way better, and they were calling it Retaface, is kind of like a trending hashtag, where they look significantly better. They're getting in great shape, putting on muscle. It seems to be like the perfect magic drug from what they're presenting it to be, right? But obviously, if you're wise, you know there's other issues involved here, and it's very new from what I can tell that there's no long-term side effects studies on it. And you were telling us off camera too about it being only for animal or non-human use, animal use only, that type of thing. So if you could kind of expand on that, because I'm assuming that that'll become more and more popular, as that's kind of the answer for Ozempic.
Yeah, you're only going to hear the success stories on these podcasts. The unsuccessful ones somehow never make it to that.
Yeah.
I've read extensively. In fact, last week I actually checked on the availability in a compounding pharmacy. The third ingredient, which is really a metabolism controller, is not available through a compounding pharmacy. So you got to be real careful on where you get that third element in this GLP-3, as they co-named it. It generally is not for human use. You don't know what it's laced with. And if I can't get it through a compounding pharmacy, I may try it on myself, but I'm not going to recommend a patient to do it. So I would say, look, what's out there already works great. You just got to know how to use it, okay? And, the thing is, it may cause you to have more weight loss faster, but in the wrong hands, you're going to have a problem somewhere, okay? So it sounds good, and they're coming up even with things that are not even GLP agonists. They work through different mechanisms. This is a whole new pharmaceutical ball game, and it means increased income, so it's going to have a lot of different things coming out. But if you can't get it from a compounding pharmacy or it's not pharmaceutical, I would be very careful on what I'm injecting, because I don't know what it's laced with. We've had things before that were laced, but and I can't certainly recommend something that says not for human use, because that's not even off label. That's off human. Okay. So I know what you're saying. It should be readily available soon. But in the meantime, if you know what you're doing, I've had outstanding results on what we have available.
But you're just always taking a risk. You're going that way. So.
You are. And is it worth it? Well, not with what's available. I don't think so. If you're not getting what you want, then you probably need to see somebody who knows what they're doing to get what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of shifting gears from that, and that was super helpful. I appreciate you kind of diving deep into that. One of the other things that's been really popular on social media has been M&M and NAD+, and how those are kind of the foundation framework for your body to function optimally, and that those taper off, after your mid age range. And people are pushing that and cutting clips of other, popular people, Joe Rogan, that type of thing, speaking positively about it. But then I see at the bottom of their video that they're like, buy it from my shop, right? So they're obviously promoting it for their own benefit. But the clips that I did see seemed to be that there was some valuable information about those two elements.
Well, and I think Haley can answer this too. We haven't had the outstanding results I was kind of hoping from that. Now, remember, when you're talking about NMN or NAD+, you're, again, looking at a cell function, and you're forgetting about the tissue that surrounds the cell. I don't care what you put in the cell, the mitochondria, and these things are aimed toward mitochondrial function. It's not going to matter if you have a destabilized extracellular matrix. The cell comes second. The matrix, or what surrounds the cell, is always the first thing that has to be balanced. So if you have a well-balanced matrix, then the NMN, which is a precursor to NAD, and they're starting to put them together now, may work better. But I haven't had what you call an aha moment, I don't think. And really, oral I found to be somewhat worthless. The injection may be a little better. The IV takes a long time, and you can, have nausea, some other side effects, I think, with it. But I think it's still going to be a selective group that may benefit from this. And I think it's kind of like methylene blue right now,
Yeah,
methylene blue comes and goes. See, I've been around long enough to see these things come, and it's like a sinusoidal curve. 10, 15 years ago, there was methylene blue. Now it's back. One of our politicians, I won't say his name, takes methylene blue, and it's been in our religious experience, everybody. I just caution them not to turn blue. I do use methylene blue. It is an FDA-approved form to prevent chronic bladder infections, by the way. But it's supposed to, work again through the mitochondria. But you're thinking on a biologic pathway like an FDA drug. Don't think of it alone like that, or you're going to be disappointed in the outcome. So, again, the peptides offer us a way to potentiate a stabilized matrix with a cell that needs a little kick. That's how I see it. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, how many peptides did you say that there was roughly?
Between last time I checked, between 3,000 and 4,000. Okay,
Yeah,
so there are a lot of them out there. A lot that I haven't don't know anything about because I'm not sure, but I've got a list of the popular ones, and generally the ones I've either tried on myself or on patients who've had good results. So a lot of this stems from observation-based clinical outcomes. Okay, in other words, if it works, we use it. If it doesn't work, it could be the patient, but I'm more skeptical about general recommendations on it. Okay.
Yep, I think that's great. And you're talking about the matrix surrounding the cell and,
Yeah,
and addressing that. How would you approach that from a knowledge standpoint, just to understand what you're doing, and then what is a good approach to?
So I always refer to my book, which Kaylee said, I'm going to put a couple of chapters out. It's all devoted toward stabilizing the matrix. What you want to do is you want to lower the inflammation. It's a different type of mindset where you use, like I have a thing called Intest Restore. Okay, well, it helps restore the gut, but it lowers inflammation. It helps the matrix stabilize. You want to have vitamin C, lysine, proline. Those are the building blocks kind of the rebar that make up the extracellular matrix. The matrix, remember, contains a microenvironment of other cells, okay, like the fibroblasts, the lymphocytes. But these are all designed to support the cell that's equated with that organ. So if you're in the brain, it's the neuron that you want to support. That matrix supports the neuron. And by the way, for Alzheimer's, the amyloid plaque, the tau protein, gums up the matrix, so the neuron can't work. So you see how, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, the matrix comes first. I mean, remember what Pasteur was supposed to have said on his deathbed, that the cell is nothing, the matrix is everything. It came out a little differently. He really said, the microbe is nothing, the surrounding tissue is everything. So again, you have to make sure that your extracellular matrix is stabilized. And when you talk about detoxing or becoming alkaline, you're working on the matrix. You're not working on that cell, okay? It's the matrix that you detox or alkalinize. So that determines the function of the cell ultimately. And sometimes with these peptides, we think in terms of cell. That's like thinking in terms of chemotherapy. Well, you're attacking a cancer cell when really, had you looked at the matrix initially, you may not have had the cancer cell in the first place. So again, be focused on the big picture, and these peptides, can be used, I think, in a wiser manner, okay?
Yeah.
I have to brag on you for a second, because for anyone who's just now listening in, you created Intest Restore. What year was that you created it?
Longer than I want to say, 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
I mean, that's been improved a long way, but it's still the basic thing. And again, I actually did studies against a pharmaceutical drug. Everybody complains that they'll say, well, the nutraceuticals, you never test them against the pharmaceutical. How do you know they work? Well, for my patent on my cream, I actually used the matrix powder, and it was comparable to roughly a 200 milligram Celebrex tablet. And if you know what Celebrex is, it is one of the most powerful COX-2 inhibitors. It's for arthritis. It blocks pain by blocking the COX-2. The only problem is if you use it long enough, you'll have a kidney problem or hemorrhage. So, but the Intest Restore doesn't do that. So these things do have validity, but again, we're not FDA approved. And again, we don't treat a disease, we treat a condition. And that condition is a destabilized matrix, which gives rise to the same symptoms as a disease. So we're not getting caught treating, curing, or preventing a disease. We're treating it. We are addressing a destabilized extracellular matrix, which in turn does the same thing that you're going to end up getting when you do a drug anyway, okay? It's all wording, but we don't want to get in a riot with the FDA.
No, and the company that did you sell that patent partially to them, or did they co-make it with
We're
you?
co-made, okay.
So you
So that's all I
co-made
can
it,
say about it. So
right?
and no
And
more.
right, and that's what I love about that process, though, is that you guys test it. That not only does the product have what it says it has in it,
Yes.
you also test the efficacy on the body. So, like, is the body actually absorbing it? And so that's why a lot of people ask me, they're like, well, why this brand, or why Dr. McWhorter's brand? And it's because the testing is there. We know that it's
and we've
working.
used it for years on all these patients. So it's observation-based clinical outcome. Now, a lot of people say, well, they don't have stringent controls on nutraceuticals. From the companies that I use, yes, they do. In fact, we have to pay extra. Part of that is passed on, unfortunately, to the consumer, but their FDA is pretty stringent on these nutraceuticals. It may have not been in the past, but they're enforcing it now. So again, I depend on them for myself, but they would submit to me, a spectroscopy of what's included in a batch that goes out. Now that you don't get any better than that. So that's whenever I see a batch that I order from, I'm getting a spectroscopy run handout of the ranges in there, and they're very tight. So again, you want to check your source. Probably find somebody who knows what they're doing and has done it a long time. That would be my guess.
Gotcha. So anybody who's learning more about peptides and interested in trying them, what's your recommendation for going about that, so that they can do it in a complete way, like you're talking about, where you're considering everything else rather than just a specific symptom that they're trying to
Well,
address?
you want to find somebody who has the big picture. I mean, somebody who is familiar with balancing your matrix, but then has a working knowledge of peptides. And the peptides have been around. I bet I've been using them. Well, first of all, this GLP-1 stuff started over 20 years ago, okay? It's been around long. These other peptides, I think it's been 10, 12 years at least. Now, new ones have come around since then. But, they have plenty of courses and conferences. And I think it's just somebody, and it's hard to tell how to gauge their expertise because you don't have a formal, way of being board certified in peptides or anything. But I think if they just come at you straight with peptides and don't talk about, balancing your matrix and stuff, you got to step back and say, is this the big picture that I will benefit from, or should I seek somebody who does the whole, protocol, okay?
With our patients, so you cannot come to us and just get a peptide. What we do is we have like the functional lifestyle medicine appointment where we go through your entire history, we align your supplements, look at your blood work, and then we say, okay, let's do these supplements and maybe we'll start considering some of these peptides.
Yeah, you have to have a lifestyle. If you need hormonal balancing, then you support the matrix. Then you can add, if there's anything left over you need, then you can add the peptides. That's when you start putting the peptides in, when you do the basics, and then you see what's left over to do. But to hear, say, a podcast, even something like this, and go out and say, well, I want to start that because it does this, I'm afraid you might be disappointed. And a lot of times, remember, the placebo effect is for 12 weeks. You may feel like it's improved, but that after that third month, that may not be around anymore. So you have to be very careful that a placebo effect doesn't occur. Now, for the semaglutide, pretty quick, if it's a placebo effect because your weight doesn't respond as well as you'd want to. But I've been very happy with the semaglutides and tirzepatide. I think it's one of the best things that's ever happened, especially for the clientele that I take care of in the age group. But I think these others have a great usage. I use, since I see people in an age group where we have rotator cuff tears, other tears, things like the TB500, BPC 157. Those have been very, very helpful in my practice. But again, you have to use those in combination with other things to get the maximum benefit. You have to understand how the peptide works. For instance, on the BPC 157, it really works through a nitric oxide type pathway. So I supply my own tested way of improving nitric oxide to potentiate it. Okay. So again, just giving the peptide, and you have to know how to give the peptide depending on what the complaint is. But then, you have to boost nitric oxide. You might want to use testosterone, depending male, female, and that combination works better than anything alone.
That's really good. So from anybody else who's like me, that's kind of needs a basic level understanding is, peptides are kind of like, they could turn on switches that allow your body to communicate the way that it needs to.
Yes.
And so different things, whether it be food, hormones, or whatever, could turn off those switches. But if we're just simply going on and turning on the switch, that doesn't necessarily mean that the function's going to complete its task if it doesn't have the resources to, right? And that's where you're talking about supplements or other additional things. We may open up that pathway by turning on the switch, but there's no resources to funnel there.
Well, remember, a single pathway is never the answer.
Yep.
It's going to be a system of pathways. And unfortunately, most FDA-approved medications block a biologic pathway completely. Now, that pathway was there for a reason. And if you block it for, say, 3 to 5 years, that's when you start seeing these black box warnings, okay? Now, so what you need to now, semaglutide is the only one that I've ever seen that doesn't block a pathway. It augments a healthy pathway that nature is sabotaging to get rid of you, since as you get older, nature doesn't need you anymore because your reproductive years are over or you had bad genetics. But semaglutide works exactly opposite to, I'd say, that almost every FDA-approved medication. It augments a natural pathway, improving its functions. So that's why you can take it indefinitely, okay? And I've told many patients that, but that's how I think of it. But again, you're right. It flips on a switch, but if it flips on the switch and the wires aren't, insulated or they're not connected, you're not going to get what you want, okay?
Exactly. No, that was super helpful. Is there anything else, because we're running out of time here, is there anything else that we haven't covered on here that you think is very important for people to know about peptides?
No, I think this is an excellent introduction to peptides. They have booklets online. In my chapter, I've kind of outlined roughly. It's hard to write everything because not only is it the peptides, now they have what you take as far as series of peptides to get, and how you start one peptide, then you add another, then another, depending on what condition. So like one of my, peptide protocols may have 4 different peptides I use, but not at one time. There's one peptide that'll detox you after you clean things up. And just say, like, for your memory, then you add another peptide that would help, regenerate the nerve endings, whatever. And so it's not only giving the peptide, but you combine it with other peptides, and what sequence do you do that in? So it's a real art form at this. And I think as time goes on, we'll find more peptides. And the FDA right now is trying to decide what a peptide is. So it hasn't really, on these peptides, it's kind of in a gray area where, they haven't come out. They're not happy with it, but they haven't, banned them. Okay? And I don't even want to give an idea to do that. So, but I think as time goes on, it's only going to flourish. And I think they're very powerful, and it's certainly opened up a whole new frontier of medicine.
So you have a book on this?
I have a chapter in my book. And again, it's just introductory. Okay. But it's something that will probably change in 6 months. That's why I have it kind of an online thing. So, and you look at now, I get advertisements for peptide conferences 2 or 3 a day. I mean, everybody in the world's got a peptide conference. So it's the hot thing right now, maybe right behind methylene blue. So,
so where would people go to find your online resources?
Well, Kaylee's in charge of that as soon as I get it to her to edit. So
okay.
It's kind of like the never-ending story. I got to just stop and say, let's edit it and put it online.
It's version 1.
It's version 1, so that's all right. But I think she'll let it'll be announced. In the meantime, though, I'd say, they do have some reading material out there, but be careful that, they're not trying to sell you something, okay? Because they never tell you the other side, and there's always another side. But on the peptides, they're relatively safe, I must say, used in the right hands and stuff. And I think they offer a huge advantage. And it's already shown that with the semaglutide or the Ozempics and Wegovy's, whatever, okay?
Well, you were saying that it's just introductory, but I think that's what everybody needs, because they don't teach you this in school. And, the only way that people are getting this information is through podcasts, and people are starting to bring this up. So I think it'll be really exciting to release that.
It is introductory because, look, you don't want to get lost in these pathways because then you don't need to follow the complexities things and you get confused. So when I say introductory, yes, it's kind of like something you can read and walk away and say, okay, I understand it better. And I kind of know, if offered this, what to expect. And, but you may not know the pathways, but you don't need to anyway, because to me, that's not part of the treatment program.
That's what the doctor's for.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them don't know that, so that's even better. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time and advice and information. That was really cool. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.